Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today as we talk about multi-factor authentication, better known as MFA, in order to strengthen security of access to your data. And it's no longer just for VPN and email. My name is Alex Zagievsky. I am a Senior Solutions Architect for Winslow Technology Group. And joining me today is Matt Kozlowski, Vice President of Professional Services and Cybersecurity for Winslow. Next slide, please. Before we join into today's topic, I'll start off with a brief overview of Winslow Technology Group and then hand the mic over to Matt to dive into today's topic. Throughout the presentation, we're happy to take your questions via the Q&A feature of this webinar app, but because we have a limited amount of time to get through a ton of really great content, we'll have to follow up with you directly after the webinar to answer those questions. Next slide, please. So a few words about Winslow. We've been in business for over 18 years as a technology solutions provider, headquartered in Waltham, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. We have a distributed workforce, as so many others do as well today, with satellite offices in Charlotte, North Carolina, as well as New York, New York. And I'm very proud to announce the opening of our office in Washington, D.C., so we can better serve folks in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. We specialize in hardware, software, and services, not only for the core data center, but also for end user compute, complemented by our cybersecurity, disaster recovery, and cloud solutions. We strive to identify and develop expertise in game-changing technologies, and our thought leaders like Matt being a stellar example of that in order to bring you the best possible outcome. Next slide, please. So how do we accomplish this goal? By making it and IT personal. Hope you saw what I did there. We are passionate about delivering personalized solutions and services using the breadth and depth of expertise found in every facet of Winslow. This includes our relationship with our partners and the IT community at large. Next slide, please. So lastly, before I turn it over to Matt, I'd like to point out that our solutions and process in general are very data-driven, using our various assessments, many of which are complementary, to help identify gaps in areas such as cybersecurity, data center design, disaster recovery preparation, to name just a few. And with that, I'll turn it over to Matt, who will start a conversation on how to effectively secure the access to your environment. Matt, over to you, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. I appreciate it. All right. So MFA 2.0, just an interesting kind of data point when we think about multi-factor authentication and going back. And this is a little bit older. I just like this quote. It's like, based on our studies, your account is more than 99.9% less likely to be compromised if you use MFA. So that was a Microsoft article. I just thought that was like a really important and powerful statistic to cement what we're going to talk about with multi-factor authentication today. So what is MFA? This is pretty standard now. Everyone knows it. So multi-factor, courtesy again of Microsoft. It's something you know, something you have, and something you are. And then combining these factors, we can accurately assess an individual's identity to then grant them access and things of that nature. Multi-factor authentication today is pretty ubiquitous across different apps, whether it's at home with your Facebook or God forbid, TikTok or Instagram, things of that nature. But we're seeing some new drivers that are pushing what we think of as traditional MFA, which has been reserved for more remote VPN access and like email access and things of that nature, to more like administrative functions, which we'll talk about. So some of the drivers today would be kind of this work from anywhere at any time employee situation, right? You don't know where people are. I mean, today, especially after COVID, the remote workforce has been very widely adopted. So you need multiple ways to identify employees, and it's not just employees that run the business; it's employees that run the infrastructure. So, like, how do you identify admins and protect your critical, data and network infrastructure, for example, from adversarial admins, right? High stakes compromise and financial loss. It's a real thing. I mean, there's a lot going on there. A lot of companies too are just doing this for better security posture, better security hygiene, kind of sleep at night type of thing. MFA can be used, and I'll talk about this a little bit more at the end. MFA can also be used as a sensor, providing some indication of compromise and account takeover activity. It's an interesting side benefit, if you will, of MFA, and again, I'll kind of go into that a little bit more. MFA can be used in some ways for vulnerability mitigation. The example there would be you have some sort of segmented environment that is vulnerable. Maybe you have something that's running on Windows XP still and like you can't patch it. If you segment that off, but then provide kind of a gateway into that through some sort of, maybe like a VDI firewall, something like that, layer MFA on it, that's like a great way of enhancing the security of that type of environment. I would say the number one drivers right now that we're helping our organizations with is a combination of cyber insurance and compliance. Cyber insurers more and more are requiring MFA on network equipment, right? How do you protect your switches, your VMware environment, your firewalls, things of that nature, from an administrative perspective, not just like VPN and email. Also compliance, cyber insurance and compliance, those requirements kind of go hand in hand there. So those are kind of the modern drivers. So with this going on, Winslow Technology Group, we sat down and we're like, well, how can we help our customers? Like, what can we do about this? So we kind of came up with this idea of like MFA 1.0, which is the remote access, so your VPN, VDI, email and SaaS type stuff, which we've been doing for years now. That's fairly common, to like a newer era of a much broader use of MFA. So it includes remote access and email and SaaS and all that. But consider MFA now for desktop and server logon, whether it's local logon or RDP. Administrative access, so this is admins accessing things like switches and other data center equipment, having multi-factor authentication to protect the equipment that's protecting your organization, right? And then a newer kind of version of this is the notion of proxy admin sessions, or PAM, and that's more of like a privileged access management solution. I'll touch on that a little bit here as well. So without further ado, I'm going to walk you through a couple examples of this in slides, and then I'm going to just show you some examples in practice, because I feel like we talk through a bunch of this stuff, and you all like attend these like webinars and stuff, and it sounds all great up in the cloud, right? But in practice, it can be kind of hard to visualize how some of this like plays out. So I'm going to show you that. That's the intent of this webinar. If we run out of time, which could happen, and you have some questions, I am more than happy to set up some time, one-on-one and chat with you a little bit about your concerns. Just either put them in the chat and we'll collect them all, or email webinars@winslowtg.com and we'll get right back to you. All right, so first up, this is for protecting Windows local logon. And if this was a room full of people, I'd ask, like, how many people are familiar with Windows Hello for Business? And some of you may laugh, like it's a laughing matter almost, right? It's actually not. Windows Hello for Business can provide some really interesting capabilities that are super simple to implement and already built into the operating system. They don't require cloud access or anything like that. And I'm gonna show you kind of like a live example of this and how it works a little bit. But one of the things when it comes to protecting local logon to workstations and even servers for that matter, literally directly from Microsoft, you can read it on their article. They say Windows today natively only supports the use of a single credential for unlocking a device. Like, that's how Windows works. That's it. Microsoft worked on Windows Hello as kind of an extension of that, if you will, to provide some of the capabilities that you would think of for multi-factor auth today. So one of these things is Windows Hello for Business has been extended with a multi-factor unlock, if you will. So the example I'm going to walk you through, has a PIN access as the first factor, which is similar to a password, right? And then I'm going to use a paired Bluetooth device as a known trusted signal, if you will, to Windows. Also, you can configure it to use like known Wi-Fi networks and things like that. However, the paired Bluetooth device is the most effective way to do it, and I'll show you kind of how that works. So this is kind of example one of a way you can use multi-factor auth to secure local logon to a desktop. It doesn't cost anything. This is built right into Windows 10, and you can take advantage of it at any time if you want. The only complexity to this, I would say, is you have to be familiar with how to pair a device with Windows, and that device has to be paired in advance for this to work. But it's pretty cool stuff, and it's built right into Windows. All right, next up, along the lines of this, if you want like a bit more sophisticated way to protect a logon. Duo offers a really awesome platform for it. They're certainly not alone in this, but the way Duo security works, and this can protect local logon, it can protect RDP. They have some really interesting hooks too that can protect UAC prompts too. So if someone escalates to admin, you can actually require multi-factor auth to execute that admin function from a UAC type prompt. So this, again, I'll kind of walk you through an example of it live, but you put the username and password in, prompt comes up like most people are familiar with Duo, and you can go from there. Duo is pretty slick too. We're obviously happy to help you out with it. Duo is available to anyone for a pretty limited 10 user type account, but it's a cool way to test it out and get started. All right, so we talked about two mechanisms to protect desktop logon, which is a fairly or becoming, I should say, a much more common ask than it ever was before. One of the core principles of this webinar, and if I can impart any wisdom to you, it's starting to consider how to protect access to like your network equipment and things of that nature, your servers, your VMware environment, and things like that. And you might say, hey Matt, like I have a data center firewall, I'm using firewalls to IPS traffic between the two environments. Like that's great, layered approach, love it, but also it's probably not going to be as effective as a multi-factor solution in terms of an attacker coming in and crossing between network boundaries in some cases and invoking some actions. So this is just another kind of layer, if you will, in the defense in-depth tool bag. So here's like one super simple way you can do it. I'm going to use RDP and Duo just for this example. So how this would work is you would stand up, and I'll again kind of walk you through a live demo of this. You would stand up kind of like a utility workstation, an admin workstation or server, whatever, or a couple of them. And on that, you would install some sort of utility like Duo, I'm just going to use for example purposes, to provide the MFA part for logon to that utility workstation or server. So any admin that would access this workstation or server would have to use MFA to get there, right? On this utility workstation or server, this would essentially be a glorified jump box, if you will, to access either by SSH, HTTPS, whatever, your switches, network infrastructure, things like that. And on that equipment, you would use ACLs to restrict management access to just this set of utility, or admin, workstations servers. So, is this the most high-tech solution? Definitely not. Is it effective? Yeah, it's fairly effective. It's certainly better than nothing. And if budgets are tight and you're interested in providing at least some level of multi-factor protection to admin access to switches and things of that nature, this could be a really great way to kind of start down the journey too. So this is again simplistic, like you're logging on to kind of a jump box protected by MFA, and the key to this is having ACLs like on your switches and stuff that are restricting access just to this this set of workstations or servers. All right, kind of moving up the stack in complexity here. Shifting gears a little bit to a different type of technology too. So Microsoft NPS, essentially a Radius server, right? That is built right into the Windows Server operating system, actually can leverage Azure AD MFA for Radius access, which is really slick. So with just NPS again, that's built into Windows. Microsoft has an Azure AD NPS extension. It's kind of a DLL and a couple things you load on the server. And that provides access from the NPS server to Azure Active Directory for things like providing a multi-factor authentication. Super cool way to do it. Most network equipment these days does support Radius Logon. So this is a fairly standards-based way of leveraging Azure AD MFA with Radius compliant equipment, like most switches, firewalls, things of that nature. So what else though? So we've actually used NPS to secure VMware Horizon VDI solutions for things like thin clients where there is no way to embed the modern auth kind of splash page, that would come up if you're familiar with Microsoft and 365 solutions. So this is pretty cool. I'm going to show you how this works too. All right. Finally, moving up the stack in complexity and certainly capability too is your privileged access management. So PAM solutions can do a couple things. First, they can serve as a super high-tech password vault where they can generate and store passwords, rotate passwords and things of that nature, and admins don't even know what these passwords are. That's the kind of idea with many of the privileged access management solutions. Also, you may have different levels of users in your environment. You may have like a real junior network admin where you're like, you know what, I do want you to make VLAN changes. I want you to make and at least troubleshoot switch issues, things of that nature. But like, I don't want to give you the admin passwords to everything, and I kind of want to supervise your sessions. A bunch of these solutions can essentially proxy a login for that user and never actually reveal the password. And I'm gonna give you like an example of this in real time too. In this case, this is Secret Server doing it. There's a bunch of solutions there. This one just was relatively easy to show you how it works and whatnot. And again, I'll go into this a little bit deeper. Okay, so those are the solutions I'm going to walk you through. Couple examples there. I did want to talk a little bit about using MFA as a sensor, right? So if you think of what goes on with MFA, especially if you're using a solution that involves an app like on a smartphone, you can assess a user's location. You can get some information about the device maybe that they're connecting from, or at least authenticating from for that second or multi-factor, we'll say. The state of the user, like given a combination of different conditions maybe, date and time and things of that nature. And you can send these MFA logs to your SOC, so your MDR SEM type solution, things like that. And what this does is it gives you some really interesting telemetry that you would not have otherwise had around application access to your application. So maybe you have an application that is not natively parsed by your MDR SEM, and it's like a huge pain in the neck to write some sort of parser for it, right? But they can ingest Azure AD logs, they can ingest Duo logs, things of that nature. This is a really great way of providing some telemetry to your other security solutions, using MFA essentially as a sensor, kind of just a little side benefit of it. All right, so what can go wrong? There's a couple things here I would highlight for some success, or to enhance your success with this. So the first one is like missed expectations. It is really easy to say, well, hey, Facebook, has this built in. It's easy to do there. Like they send me a PIN code, I get on, whatever. It's not that easy. This actually can be really complicated behind the scenes. Remember, like we were talking about Windows. Like Windows doesn't even like quote unquote natively support it. They had to extend some mechanisms with Windows Hello. So my advice is plan, test, pilot, production, kind of test, refine, and repeat. So like the emphasis on the planning, testing, and piloting phase of this, even if you have a small environment of like, I don't know, 50 or 100 users, pick 5 users to start this with. Don't turn it on for everyone and like hope for the best, right? So establish expectations, plan, test, pilot, refine, and repeat. From a technical perspective, most of these solutions are really time sensitive. So there's a couple things that can happen here. Time sync with the authenticating device and the third-party solutions, including NPS and Azure. So in that example, if the system clock on your NPS server differs too greatly from the time in Azure, like it's not going to work. You're going to get authentication errors. That's not going to work. The other thing is timeouts. So typical radius timeouts for switch authentication are like 5 seconds or less. That is not enough time for someone to like whip out their phone, wait for the push notification, click accept, and go from there. There's just not enough time. So make sure you're increasing timeouts. Those are the 2 main time issues that you could run across. And then all the stuff associated with cloud and kind of network availability. So you're gonna have to make some decisions around what if your MFA provider just isn't available? Whether it's your network is down, a user has a laptop and they're traveling in a situation where it's considered offline. How, from a policy and a technology perspective, are you going to handle offline access? Different authentication methods, and this is a little techie, different authentication methods for phones. So this is verifying the user identity. You got to put some thought into this, because you may not have the option of saying, dear user, you must load this app on your phone. Maybe you don't give out phones and you can't dictate what people do on their personal phone. Like in that case, you may want to use voice as kind of the authentication method. Always make sure you have some form of what's called like the break glass account, so you don't lock yourself out, and keep that secure and definitely separate from kind of your other stuff, and treat that with the respect it deserves, if you will. but a break glass account's pretty important if you kind of totally lock yourself out and whatnot. And then kind of last but not least here is be careful with having like a false sense of security with some of this stuff. MFA is awesome. It is another very important layer in this, but it is not the kind of end all be all of security. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you have like an unpatched system and there's some sort of privilege escalation attack that can happen on that system without a user logging on. So like if a user is not logging on, they're not going through MFA, that system is like vulnerable. So I would just say like understand that like this is just another layer in your overall cybersecurity program. All right, so let's do a little bit of a demo-age here. So I'm going to work with GoToMeeting here and get my demo kind of environment going here. And the first one I'm going to show you is Windows Hello. Okay. All right, so this is it's a virtual desktop. It's a Windows 10 desktop. In this case, I'm actually just for the purpose of this demo, I'm passing through a Bluetooth receiver to this device, and I have my iPhone paired with this device. So this is like a simple example. Again, like this is just built into to Windows technology. So I'm going to just double click here. And I'm going to get like this is my first factor, so the PIN. And we can debate to the end of time. And if you saw that, it went by real fast. It verified the Bluetooth connection of my my iPhone with the Bluetooth receiver there. And this again, like, is super simple to set up. You can deploy this with GPOs, with local group policy. You can also deploy this with Intune policies too, if you wanted to use Windows Hello for Business on a grander scale. But there's two GPO settings you want to take a look at for this. So first is obviously enabling Windows Hello for Business. And the second one is configuring what's called device unlock factors. And there's a bunch of gibberish here. Basically, by default, which fills this in for you, it's going to say, I'm going to use a PIN as my first factor with password as a backup, and then I'm going to use a known Bluetooth device as my second. And there's some signal information there, so it is relatively like distance aware. So that's kind of like example one, Windows Hello for Business. Like, doesn't get simpler than that, all built into the operating system. You just have to pair a Bluetooth device. All right, next I'm going to show you kind of the Duo logon here. Okay, so similarly, I have a virtual machine here. It's running Windows 10. I'm also going to use this to demo the second part, which is the administrative access. Like, let's pretend further that this is kind of my admin workstation. So I'm going to put in my normal Windows password, right? Duo pops up. I don't know if you heard it, but I'm going to hit verify request on my phone, and it lets me right in. Cool, simple stuff. Like, you could also use this technology again to protect like UAC prompts and things of that nature. And it's pretty easy to do. So I'm going to just extend this. Let's say this is my management workstation, right? And I'm going to show you like how it works with a switch from a switch perspective. So I am going to putty to my, this is just a basic Dell switch. There's nothing too fancy about here. Just scroll up here. So you notice like right away I get an admin prompt. That's because the IP address of this workstation is listed on an ACL on the switch for management access. And I'll show you how that works too. Just right here, it's pretty simple. So right here, IP access management allow, I'm going to permit this this workstation. I'm going to deny everything else. And then on a Dell switch, it would be this or OS 10 anyway, line V2Y, so virtual terminals. I'm going to use this this ACL for basically management access to it. So that's it. Super simple, right? So I protected the desktop with Duo from a login perspective, and then with just a switch ACL, I'm limiting access to the workstation that I protected with Duo and the RDP login. So, okay, cool. That works pretty well there. I'm going to show you the example now of using NPS. So NPS built into Windows, you're going to list your Radius clients, your different request policies, network policies, things of that nature. This has the Azure AD extension built into it. And I am going to just use a basic putty session here, and I'm gonna double click on this radius switch. I'm gonna log in as me, so Matt AD. I'm gonna put in my password. Hopefully I typed it right. And you see there's like a little delay there. Oops, I typed it wrong. If you heard that, that's the Microsoft Authenticator app in this case. I'm gonna approve my sign-in. Does a little Face ID, and wait for it. There we go. I get a switch prompt right there. So in this case, the switch here is configured for AAA or radius-based authentication using the NPS server. So you can extend and use radius and NPS for a whole bunch of other cool stuff like this too, including like VDI too. Okay. Very last, but certainly not least, is the notion of privileged access management. So in this case, I'm going to use Secret Server. It's a great little product from a company called Dichotic. Let's say I'm a junior admin now, and a regular admin has kind of populated the password vault. If you notice here, it says password not valid. That's because for this user in this particular role, I don't want them to see the password. I don't want them to know the password. I want them to interact and manage the switch, but I don't want them to necessarily know the password. So I can double click. Oops, I gotta log in first. Sorry about that. So this also is protected with a Duo push also. So I'm gonna hit connect. And if you heard it, I got the Duo prompt there. I'm gonna approve this, and bam, I'm rated to Secret Server this way. Open up my admin session here. And again, I'm in as that lower use user, so I can see like the host that I'm logging into. Again, password not valid. But I can right click on here, do connect, and it drops me right onto the switch. And this application is doing the authentication for me. Like I'm on the switch and I could do stuff. So obviously this is not the end all be all, because a user in this case, since it's full admin, could just change the password. But you'd want to apply some other stuff there too. So I know we're up against time, and these were some super quick demos, but I hope this kind of like piqued your interest, if you will, in terms of what you can do with MFA beyond just email and whatnot. MFA can be used to protect your desktop, RDP type logins. It can be used to protect your switch and firewall environments. It can be used to protect VDI. And then consider as a future maybe the whole notion of privileged access management, where you're not even revealing passwords to most of your admin users. So that's that. I'm gonna pop into the chat real quick because we do have a couple minutes. I'm gonna see if we have any questions there. There are a couple. One of them's pretty complicated, so I'm gonna follow up with you afterwards because we only have 1 minute left. Okay. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you all very much. I hope this was worth your time. If you have any questions at all on multi-factor auth, want a little consultative advice, feel free to reach out. Also, my group has all the capabilities, talent, and professional services to help you roll this kind of stuff out too. So don't go it alone. We're more than happy to help you plan and implement an MFA deployment, whether it's for 2 users, 100, or 10,000. All right, Alex, any parting words before we break for the day?
Only to thank you very much for the incredible overview of this platform, what it can do for you, just MFA in general, how it has in fact grown. I really enjoyed the demo. The simulators were great. And then most valuable, I think, is knowing all of the caveats, gotchas, and potential pitfalls that you enumerated. So as you so eloquently put, our value here would be knowing how to navigate this incredibly complex landscape and then proficiently roll out a platform such as this, which generally speaking, as you said, don't go it alone. That is absolutely the word of advice here. So that being said, yes, we got a couple of questions. We'll get back to folks via email. If you haven't submitted your questions yet, please do so via the Q&A feature of this webinar application, or drop us an email at webinars@winslowtg.com. So once again, thank you for joining us today. We hope to have provided you with some very valuable knowledge. If you'd like more information about MFA, Winslow, our assessments, or any of our services, please drop us a note at webinars, that's plural, @winslowtg.com. Have a great day and stay healthy.